7 p.m.
Oh, gosh.
Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. Henderson City Council meeting is called to order. First order of business is the review of the minutes of February 19th, 2025. Are there additions or corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion made, seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion made and carried. Request to appear before the council. Brooke, are you here?
She is not able to make
Okay.
it, but we're still going to go ahead and do it. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay.
It's the same as
It's just the usual, yep.
Yeah.
We're going to request to have 3rd Street closed. It'll be our usual alcoholic beverages that we do every year. The parade down Main Street. Basically, we need to get this done so that we can get our insurance, because we need our insurance before we can apply for a MnDOT permit.
Should we just take care of it right now?
I'll make a motion to approve that request.
I will second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Made and carried. Are there additional requests to appear before the council?
So just want to make everybody aware too that she also has the Lions gambling in, okay. Thank you.
Are there any additional requests to appear before the council? This would be the opportunity. All right, moving forward. Lane Kockelman, you're up.
Well, thanks everyone for having us tonight. So Robbie is with us too. He's back there, so he'll just be observing. And he was more involved in the audit this year, so giving him the opportunity to sit in on the council meeting. So before we get started, it's going to be very similar to what we've done in the past. We're going to go through the audit presentation. We put together a high-level summary. Not going to go through the audit report line by line. If there's any questions, we have time at the end. Otherwise, feel free to interject at any time and ask him if you have anything to add. Feel free to. Okay. So we'll start by going through our audit results, a little required communication that we have. We'll look primarily at the general fund, the main operating fund of the city. We'll also look at your other operating funds, your special revenue and capital project funds, your enterprise funds, and then also comparing to other cities in your area and throughout the state with some key performance indicators. So the first thing that we're going to go through is what the objective of financial statement audit is, what our responsibilities as auditors are, which is to provide an opinion on the financial statements that they are free from material misstatements. So really what that means, we're engaged to look at the numbers, that they're free from significant error. So we use a lot of judgment, we use a lot of our sampling to look through areas that might stand out. We'll do additional error testing of areas, one year less than the other. So an audit really is a moving target. And again, our responsibility is to opine on the financial statements. So ultimately, the financial statements themselves do fall back on the City Council through acceptance of the audit report. So with that, we gave a clean or unmodified opinion under generally accepted accounting principles, so that's good, that's what you want. We also are required to look at other areas of compliance at both the state and the federal level, and we don't have any instances of non-compliance to report for 2024. So we do have 3 audit findings, very similar, or very common in a city of your size and similar to the prior year. So we have limited segregation of duties, basically saying with Tim being the only person in the office and the overlap of controls there, we're required to put that as an internal control finding. Obviously, council is involved in some monitoring at the council level, but through the auditing standards, that isn't sufficient enough to get rid of that finding. So important to know as you do look through monthly activity to look at the bills, bank reconciliations, utility billing write-offs, those sorts of things. Preparation of financial statements. From an independent standpoint, we help put together the audit report and the financial statements related to note disclosures. So that is a finding, again, a control finding. And then also material audit adjustments, basically saying that if we didn't come in and perform the audit, that the numbers at the end of the year would not be in conformity with the generally accepted accounting principles. Again, very common. I think Tim's done a great job of getting up to speed, having things ready for us, and having things adjusted for us. So definitely a shout out to him. as he's taken on a lot here over the past couple of years. But again, if you look at the next page, those are the findings that we've had from 2023. We did have a contracting and bidding finding that was removed for the current year. Okay. Auditor recommendations is continuously review written policies and procedures as you go through. An opportunity for Tim to look at those on a rotating basis and look at investment, accounting, internal control, budget policies, those sorts of things, and see how things can improve or change. And then also, again, very similar to what we've had in prior years with the financial activity of the city, and to implement a fund balance policy, as we'll discuss in the next slide here. There's funds with also deficit fund balances, how you're going to fund those and go about those. I know that you've worked with Ellers with some rate studies to help improve some of the financial condition and the cash flows. But one other thing that we noted as part of the audit, didn't necessarily merit the level of a finding, but still something to bring to your attention. Any questions on that before we move on to some of the numbers? Okay. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the general fund, again, the main operating fund, and really we're going to focus on the orange lines and the orange data here in the next few slides. But really what this is going to indicate is where the general fund unassigned fund balance, or the dollars available for spending with the city's discretion, is at over the past 5 years. And as a measure of liquidity, we're going to compare it to your general fund expenditures. So that's going to be the yellow line. So you can see that your expenditures in the general fund have been right around that $750,000 to $700,000 from that 2020 to 2023. As the city has taken on additional challenges and projects, initiatives, inflation, or other factors that go into it, you can see the expenditures have increased to over $850,000 in 2025. So really what you want to see is that orange line fluctuate as the yellow line increases. You want the orange line to increase as well, basically saying that you're building reserves as your expenditures increase. So you can see over the past couple of years that has decreased from that 28% in 2022 down to that 5.5% in 2024. So we'll drill down a little bit more on that in the next slide here. Our recommendation is that 35%. League of Minnesota Cities recommends a similar policy, anywhere from that 35 to 50%. So as you continue to work forward and you have debt drop off, as you get a little bit more steady in some of the utility rates, again, something to consider as you move forward on how you build that back up towards that 35%. Okay? So if we go to the next page, we'll look at the general fund budget to actual. So we're going to compare your final budget amounts to what actually happened during 2024. So you see the net change in fund balances at third to last line. If that was zero, that means you'd have a balanced budget. The city anticipated about a $10,000 or a $7,000 increase with the original amended budget for the year, so more or less a break-even year for the city. You can see that anticipated about $823,000 in revenues and actually had $856,000 collected, so you had a positive variance of about $33,000. A few reasons for that: about $20,000 over in intergovernmental aid. Half of that was related to some FEMA collections from years past, and you're going to have some additional ones in 2025 here. I think you actually have already. You also saw an increase in the police aid during the year, so that accounted for about $20,000 of that. You also had some additional charitable gambling contributions related to some of the fire activity, so that was another $10,000 that was over the revenues. So again, a positive variance of about $33,000. Expenditures were also over budget, so you had a negative variance of about $112,000. So a few reasons on the expenditure side of things. Police salaries and wages increased about $90,000 from 2023, again with the staffing and the needs of the police department. Fire expenditures were $20,000 over budget as well. Again, a lot of that was offset with some additional revenue from the gambling contributions. About $45,000 of civic defense or FEMA costs, so they're not going to be eligible for reimbursement until those dollars come in. So again, a little bit of a lag in funding and the cash flows, but another area that was unanticipated. Obviously about the church building, I think that was about $35,000 overall. And so those are going to be the primary factors of the expenditures. You did see some cost savings in some other areas with lawn phasing out. Streets ended up being a positive variance as well, just because very little snow during the year, so not a whole lot of costs related to that. So overall, if you look at that third line from the top, had about a $72,000 decrease in fund balance. You also had transfer in from some unspent bond proceeds from one of the capital project funds of $71,000. So overall, your fund balance remained pretty steady from year over year, but those unspent bond proceeds can only be used for specific purposes. So that's not included in that last slide as part of that orange line in the unassigned as you look at that 5.5%. So a few areas to point out for 2024, but Tim, do you have anything else to add that you want to point out specifically for the year? Okay. All right, so we'll keep going. We'll look at the general fund revenues by type. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here other than just pointing out that the majority of your general fund revenues do come from taxes and intergovernmental revenue. So you can see both have increased year over year. The main contributor to that is that transfer. But as you think a few slides back, as that yellow line continues to increase in your budget expenditures, if you want to continue to have a balanced budget, it typically is going to come with an offset increase in taxes just because your intergovernmental funding is pretty steady year over year with the LGA. There might be some one-off ones with some small cities aids that came in, public safety response aid, ARPA dollars, but as those go away, that intergovernmental is pretty stagnant year over year. Okay. Same thing on the expenditures. So you can see your primary costs. The driver of the cost increase from the past few years is going to be that public safety, the fire, the police. So it was a little over $200,000 in 2022, and that's creeped up to about a little under $500,000 in 2024. So your other expenditure areas remain pretty consistent year over year from the past 3 years. Any questions on the general fund? Okay, so we'll keep going. The next one we're going to look at are your special revenue funds. So you have 3 funds. You have the EDA, the library, and the DNR tree grants. I'm not going to spend time on each one of these. Just know that the main factor in the EDA fund, so typically you have right about $1,000 or $2,500 in fund balance in that fund that did loan out $200,000 during the year. If you recall, for the restaurant loan, that went out for a cash outflow. So that is, as you levy for that, that will be paying back the general fund. So that's another reason why the general fund unassigned balance did go down was related to that, because the EDA is going to be paying that back to the general fund. It's just not available at the moment. So that was the main activity there. The library fund, you can see, had an increase of about $8,800. And then the DNR tree grant fund continues to spend down. Again, a lag in that funding until you're going to get the cash in future years. So I think there's about $57,000 in costs in that fund as that activity increases. You also have 4 capital project funds. Again, not going to go through every one of them, but you have the ongoing levee project and the trail project. So again, you see lag in funding there, about $200,000 overall. As we mentioned, that 2024, the 2022-2024 street project was completed during the year. So there's that $67,000. There's some interest during the year that went back to the general fund. Mainly just costs that haven't been spent yet, again, to be dedicated for that specific purpose in the general. And then you have the 2024 equipment certificate issue. So issued $500,000, you did spend about $165,000 of that, mainly on the police vehicle, and then also some radios and additional equipment there. So it's $324,000 left to spend in that. And the last 3 governmental funds are going to be your debt service funds. So you have about half a dozen debt service funds out there, about $69,000 in cash. And then you have some additional assessments being collected as well, and some other assets in there to make the bond payments. So you can see that your debt payments are pretty consistent year over year, up until 2028, until those tax abatement and equipment certificates drop off. Then you'll be able to take on some additional debt if you so choose, without having a significant impact on the levy on how it's layered. Any questions on the governmental funds? Or Tim, anything you want to add on there before we go to the enterprise? Okay. So the first enterprise fund we're going to look at is going to be your water fund. So this is going to be a little bit different than your governmental because it's primarily funded by charges for services, user rates, base, and not by intergovernmental funding or taxes like your general fund. So really what you want to see here in the top graph is your orange exceed your yellow and your black. So your orange is going to be your operating receipts, cash coming in, versus your cost to operate the water utility plus the debt payments related to that. So you can see that there was some debt that did drop off in the water fund related to that, but the water fund does continuously, or has been operating at a loss over the past 4 years. Again, as you see the operations and the cash balances in that bottom graph, we would recommend right about $300,000 of cash in the fund. You actually have a slight cash deficit overall, just with the way that some of the cash is funding. So really, if you think about again, the challenges facing the city and the rate increase over the past few years with the water and the sewer, primarily the reason for is the operating in a deficit over the past few years. So now as the city moves forward, it's going to be a catch up to start building those cash balances back up towards that minimum target cash balance that we have indicated down below. Okay. Same thing with the sewer fund, so pretty consistent in revenues or operating receipts, right about that $400,000 a year compared to the cost. You can see the general increase in cash outlays, especially related to some of the operating costs, but also with the debt payments as well as you take on that new debt for the 2023 issue, the 2022 issue, I guess. You can see the total cash balance is very similar to the water in that bottom fund. You did have the unspent bond proceeds again in 2023 related to that project. As those have been spent down, you're going to be looking at building those cash balances back up through those rate increases that you recently did. And last of the enterprise funds is
Can I ask you a question?
yes, absolutely.
22, what was the project?
The streets project.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a street?
Yeah.
For the city? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think it was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, it was like a $3.5 million project overall, maybe more than that, but
It was a little over $6 million total with that combined with the streets project on the north side of town.
Okay.
Yep.
And
And
then
so-
those are separated into the three? Okay. Thank you.
yep. Okay, and the last of your enterprise funds is the environmental services fund. So mainly just operating costs. There's not a ton of activity in here, about $25,000 a year that's generated from those fees, and primarily operating in nature. So you can see that there has been positive cash flow in this fund over the past few years, and we've maintained that cash balance in that bottom graph above where we would recommend. Now there was that $35,000 transfer from this fund to the water fund to help cash flow those activities. So if you look at the bottom graph, that's the reason for that decrease. But if you take that $35,000 out, then you're looking at, again, a steady increase year over year for that fund. So if we look at the city as a whole on slide 18, we look at your total cash and investment balances. So again, it's skewed because you have the timing of those bond proceeds and the project costs there in 2023. But overall, if you look at the cash, you have about $570,000 in 2022. In 2023, that would decrease a little bit of those bond proceeds, and then you're down to about $300,000 in 2024. So again, primarily related to the capital project, also some of the other outlays that were made with the loans and the building purchases, those sorts of things. So again, as you move forward and as you look on taking those additional rate increases, levy increases, you'll look at building those back up as time moves on. Okay, and the last thing I got to go through is the key performance indicators. So again, how you compare to other cities in your area. So City of Henderson is going to be the orange line. Other cities in Sibley County is going to be the yellow bar, and then other Class 5 cities in the state is going to be black, so any cities under 2,500 in population. So overall, your tax rates has decreased, so about 80% in 2021 is down to 64% in 2024. A lot of that's existing market value adjustments with how things are assessed. So one thing I like to point out is look at how the trend is and how you compare to some of your peers and how they're trending as well. Now, unfortunately, we don't have access to the 2023 and the 2024 data from the state until they release it, so a couple years behind, but from a tax rate standpoint, you are a few percentage points lower than your peers in your area and throughout the state. The same thing on the taxes per capita, basically an overlap with other cities in Sibley County. Okay. The debt, we already discussed quite a bit. We took on additional debt again to pay for that $6 million project over the past few years. So you've seen that your debt has increased related to that and then capital related. The last slide I have is slide 21. So again, I'm going to compare how you stack up against other cities in your area and other cities throughout the state, your size. So from an operating cost standpoint, that's going to be your current expenditures on the left. You can see that you, again, have been lower than where your peers have been at. Those have jumped up in 2023 and 2024. Again, a lot of it is going to be inflationary in nature and challenges. So once we do get that data, I would expect a similar increase in the yellow and the black bars as well. It's just, we don't, again, don't have the data, so it's not available. Capital expenditures per capita, really nothing that stands out there. Again, some additional outlays in 2023 and 2024 with the projects the city has taken on. But again, that's basically just a matter of needs and where the city wants to dictate the resources and their efforts. And with that, that is all I had to go through. So again, try to keep it high level, try to keep it in layman's terms as much as you can. I know that's a lot to digest.
Class 5 cities are defined by budget amount and size, population.
So I think it's defined at like at the state level on how they classify some things for various funding and other resources like that. So anything under 10,000 is class 4. Anything from 10,000 to I think 20,000 is class 3, and then 20 to 100,000 is class 2, and then 100,000.
So we're a small city.
Yes.
Okay.
From a standpoint of, yes, it would be part of the smallest group of cities that they have classified.
You look at this and you work with other municipalities as well. What are your overall thoughts on where Henderson, the city of Henderson, is right now?
Well, I think if you think back to that auditor recommendation slide, and we have that in there for quite a few years now on what your plan is to start to break even and start to build some of those cash balances back up. I think you're moving in that direction where it's been pretty stagnant for the past, half dozen years. Obviously, there are some difficult decisions to make with the levies and with the rate increases. So, I think we're starting to move in the right direction here. But the cash balances, having that at the $200,000 at the end of the year is fairly low compared to other cities that we work with. Granted, it is a point in time, but it's more of an indication just on some of the decisions from past council and where the rates were at and where levies were at, and again, some of the decisions that were made there. So it's, again, a lot of challenges within the city and a lot of, again, difficult decisions having to be made. So I think moving in the right direction as you move forward here with the additional changes. So you have the sale tax that's coming on in now, June, July. And again, so you have tax anticipation certificates issued and things like that too. So again, it's, I think, moving in the right direction. It's just, again, a tough road to get to this point.
Sure. I do have a question on slide number 19.
Sure.
The tax rates, right? Can you, like 100%, their tax, cities in Sibley County, 122.3% of their tax rate. What does that mean?
So your tax rate is basically going to be a calculation on where your levy is compared to your market value and how it's being compared at the different parcels and the different taxing authorities in your taxing district. So one way to think about it is, and as I mentioned earlier, you had a lot of the change over the past few years has been to existing market value. So if you see your tax rate going down, typically that's going to be an indication of either market value adjustments or new growth, new tax capacity being taken on to the city. So That's where the primary focus of, you think of like economic development and expanding your tax base and expanding and getting new businesses, new residents to build that, so that would make your tax rate go down. But as you have existing market value increases, the way I like to think about it is think of your own home, right? So if your home is say $100,000 and the assessor comes in and says your home is now worth $120,000, so you have 20% tax or 20% increase in your value. Well, if everybody else's value in town goes up 20%, your tax burden is going to be the same if you don't have any increase in your tax rate or any levy increase. So it's really factored into how things are assessed and where the value is from an assessor's standpoint. And then, what's broken up between commercial and residential and all those other things. So it's all factored into that. And then basically whenever you have your tax levy, it's going to be who gets what piece of that portion, what's your proportionate share of that market value for that taxing district. So it's more of assessor sort of thing at the county level, and so that's why if you'll see people come in and dispute their assessed value at the end of the year, that's why. It goes off of how it's done at the county level and the assessor's office. Todd might be able to answer some additional questions on that too. If you ask him nicely.
Thanks, Lane.
So is this good or bad? That we're at 63.6% on our tax rate. Does that mean 63.6% of my property tax are dedicated to the city, in simple terms?
In simple terms, no. No.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does this have to do with tax capacity, and we're only taxing at 63.6% of our total tax capacity?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That kind of makes sense. Sorry, Lane. I'm new here.
Like I said, it's difficult, and there's been a lot of changes with the assessed values over the past 3 years. So your market value or your tax rate did drop from that 81 to 63%, but that doesn't mean that that's all new growth, right? Like, a lot of it is just with existing market value changes. So that's where you need to look at, or why we try to focus on how you compare to your other relevant taxing authorities that's in your area and throughout the state.
This is where I used to make a Jess on Mr. Drysdale joke, but nobody gets it anymore.
Still wouldn't.
Yeah. I don't think we'll get that.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Very thorough.
Any other questions? Or Tim, anything else that you want to discuss or point out?
No, it's all covered.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, everyone. I think Tyler's next. Grill him about the tax rates, too.
I'll make a motion to approve the findings.
Second. You guys.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion made and carried. Todd, you're up. Todd Hagan,
All right.
Ayers and Associates.
Yep, Colors Associates, yep, good report there. Thanks, Lane, for doing that. That's a lot of information. So we do have that financial management plan coming up. We're working on it. We let Tim know kind of where we're at. Liz is working on it in the office, and that kind of is going to kind of put that together. We'll talk about tax capacities, fund balances, how we're going to sort of grow that reserve, and we talked about this tax anticipation certificates, kind of putting money in the bucket for a year, and we might have to do another one. Remember sort of the sort of exercise we went through, so we might have to do a couple of those, right, to catch up, so we can catch up and still pay our bills and stuff. That's really how you do it, and those are going to be, that's good. Those are going to be the line items we're going to have you guys focus on. That's what's going to be most important, is sort of tax rate and fund balance growth, and kind of weaning ourselves off of that cash flow financing and moving forward and getting the rate. So the tax levy, we'll see where that has to go. So that may change, right? So that's coming up in a little while, right? I know you guys are working on it. And so in the meantime, we've got another bond coming up, Series B bond, and this is for the fun stuff, right? Okay. So this is capital project financing. We've got this at about $566,000. I call it a tax abatement and sales tax revenue bond, right? So if you look at the first page coming into this pre-sale report that I've got in front of you guys, it kind of talks about the purposes. So we have the Ellenson Park improvements, and that's the sales tax part, right? And then we've got the city share, the Highway 93 levy part, and that's going to be payable from property taxes, and then the city trails match, and that's going to be payable from property taxes. So in order for me to issue us to issue a bond and find authority to do that, the sales tax is already in place, right? So that's already been approved by the legislature and you guys, and it's coming on, like Lane had said, you guys this year, and so we've got that timed pretty good, and the payments are going to really be coming in 2026, right, on that, so we should be okay. Any payments coming before that, for all three of these bond purposes, is going to come from the bond itself, called capitalized interest, because we're not going to be able to levy until this year for payable 2026, so there's going to be the bondholder's going to want to get paid within the year, and so the timing, when we issue a bond earlier in the year, the timing is such that we got to put a little bit of interest payment in the bond issue, and that's called capitalized interest. So if we issued a bond in August, September, October, or something like that, we wouldn't have to do that. And so the other two authorities here, state law authorities to issue, is called tax abatement. So we're going to have to hold a public hearing. I think we've done that before here, probably nobody remembers, but it's kind of a non-event. It just gives us the authority to issue a bond for these types of purposes, like trails and levy and sort of odd stuff like that, like, not streets and water and sewer. So it's these types of things. The park would have been in there too, but we've got that separate sales tax authority for that. So we're going to hold a hearing, and it's going to be on April 16th when I come back for the bond sale. So we'll hold that hearing before the bond sale. And then so Tim and I are going to find some parcels that are going to give us enough tax capacity to equal the total principal amount of those two purposes. This is a statutory exercise we have to go through, and I've got it figured out, the magic number. I gave Tim the magic number, and we've sort of are looking at some parcels that'll work for us. So we're not picking on any properties in a negative way. We just need to identify them so we get the capacity we need, and we can't do this again on it, right? So we can't do this twice. So we have to keep track of them. So we've done this. We've done this 3 times. In 2020, 2011, 2018, and 2023, we issued similar bonds. So this exercise has been done in Henderson before. So if Tim gets any phone calls, we put some parcel identification numbers in the notice. I think he'll know what to say, and if he doesn't, he can give them to me.
So these are residents in our community?
Yeah, and what we're going to do is we're going to pick, they don't have to have a special relationship to the project, but it's kind of nice if they did, so I think these are kind of in the middle of everything. And we're talking about maybe a bank and the motorsports, and both banks maybe, a grocery store, stuff like that they're always going to kind of be there, and they're not going to, And so what this ends up being is just really a tax levy throughout the whole city. So they're not going to get taxed any different than anybody else.
They just need to be identified.
They just need to be identified.
Collateral, sort of?
It's a statutory exercise that we just have to, they have to meet a test, right, that I'm calculating. We can't abate them twice, right, so we have to look at those other 3 years, so we're not doubling up. And then they can't be like in a tax increment financing district, so we're thinking maybe they're not going to do any of that kind of stuff on these parcels for 15 years, right? So the bond's 15 years. And the bond's 15 years because that's the sales tax, the length of the sales tax. And we were going to shorten up the levy part and the trails part a little bit to 2 or 3 or whatever, 4 years, but we're issuing that sales tax at 15 anyway. So, and I think that's going to help out with that financial management plan. You know, why crunch us up, right, and make a bubble, you know, in the tax levy? Let's just smooth it out. And we can. And so the reason, so the method of my, to this bond issue, and I know on the tax anticipation certificate, we went out to various banks, you know, and they bid. So I think since this is 15 years, it's over the 10 years that they like, you know, to buy. If you're okay with that, Tim and I are going to maybe just negotiate with one of the banks this time. Maybe it's that Roseau Bank that bought it. Maybe it's Hometown Bank. Maybe it's First State Bank. And just see if we can if they would be willing to go out for 15 years, right? Because I'm just afraid that if I throw this out to the wolves, 15 years they're going to maybe balk at some of that. So I think we need to kind of coddle this one a little bit and do some negotiations and stuff for someone that's interested in it, if you don't mind. So that's the method we're gonna do this time. Instead of coming back on April 16th with some bids, we will just let you know who we negotiated with and stuff like that. And then our job too is to make sure it's a fair deal, right? So we can start I can show them comparables and all that kind of stuff, and if it's a little out of sight, I can kind of bring them down to reality, hopefully, and we'll work from there. And I would still like this bond issue prepayable on any date without penalty and stuff like that, in case we get some money we want to throw at it and bring it down, you know what I mean? So, because I think that's going to work well with that whole financial management plan thing we got going on. I want some flexibility here. So, yeah, so that's how we're gonna do it. That's pretty much what this pre-sale report talks about. You've seen most of the terms and stuff. They're similar to what you've seen before, but I wanted to hit the high points on that, what we're gonna do. So tonight's the pre-sale. We're gonna ask you to adopt 2 resolutions. One is to approve Ellers to send this out to a bank that you select through us, and we'll come back on the 16th, right, and show you what that looks like, and then we'll have that. The other resolution is to call for a public hearing on that tax abatement, and that's going to happen on April 16th too, and we'll plug in those parcel numbers that we feel are appropriate, and I kind of already talked about what we're thinking on that. If we include a bunch of residential, I got to put a lot of parcel numbers in it. So that's why we want to put some parcel numbers that have more value, right? So it's condensed down to, I don't know, maybe 10 of them, right, instead of 20 of them. So that's the deal. And then our hope is just to close it on May 1st, and you'll get the proceeds then too. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And I don't know, I yield to you folks if you have any questions for me. Otherwise, you can ask them between now and then, to Tim, and I'll answer them for you. So a little bit of razzle dazzle here to get this one going, but you've done that before. But you new folks did have it, but those of us who've been in the city for a long time, right, Keith? And so I don't know if you have any if you really want us to work with one bank or not, but I'm just thinking, Tim and I will kind of figure this out based on kind of who's bid on your bonds before. So it's really like that. It's really like that Roseau Bank, Hometown Bank, Security, State Bank. So we just want to get a feel for those guys, because some of them might just say, yeah, we can't hold a 15-year bond and they'll pass on it and stuff, and then we'll know ahead of time, right? So, yeah, that's the
What's
idea.
the average bond time then?
The term?
15 Yeah, is 15?
Yeah, so here's the deal here. So there's a couple things that kind of indicate where we want to sell the bond, right? So one is how large it is, and the other one's how long it is, right? So if we're around 500,000 or so, it's small enough to look at banks. And if it's about 10 years, then we would head into the bank direction for like a limited competitive sale like that, because if we go out to the public market, it's just a lot more expensive to sell a bond like that. It involves more people and it's more work to put together that offering document to sell it out there. So if it's like $1 million or so, like we had that large bond, we got that rated, right, through the state. It was guaranteed. It went out, it was like, I don't know, what was it, $4 million or something like that? And it was, how far did we go out on that one? 20 maybe? Something like that, yeah. So that one was worth going out to the market, to the public market on that. But banks really just like that 10-year and under stuff. And if we go to 15 or so, sometimes they'll come back, and I won't be surprised when they come back and say, well, we can do 15, but maybe there'll be a reset, rate reset at 10. And I really don't like to do that, so I'm going to try to avoid that because that's an unknown. Who knows where the rates are going to be in 10 years. So I want to lock and load this thing, and so if there are banks that will do that. So I sold so Wyndham had a $20 million hospital bond that it's not a general obligation bond. This was a couple of years ago, so we did do a negotiation and opened it up locally and stuff like that. So the banks decided to, I think it was 20 years, but they did do the reset on that one, and that's okay for those guys. It's a revenue bond, and they're kind of used to that kind of stuff, right? So, and it's an expansion, second expansion to the hospital. So when we sold that one, rates were high. That's when the feds were jacking up the rates. So we're thinking on that one, we probably played our cards right, because they have ratcheted that down a couple times now. And so when that comes, that'll probably be a cost savings for them. So we kind of sold that one on the high end, right? And so that rate reset, I think, is going to be an advantage for us then, but it's something I don't think we want to do here, because we just really, with that financial plan, we don't want to have any surprises with rates and stuff. So, yeah. So it's not the same for every bond we issue. They're all a little bit different. Just kind of depends what we're looking at here.
Historically speaking, where's the 5.5? Is that what our rate is on this?
We estimated that at 5.5, but we have a 0.5% of cushion in there. So I'm hoping that that's going to be under 5. So, I mean, I've seen that, and a lot of the times, the banks kind of hold their rate at, sometimes it doesn't matter much between 10 and 15 or 5 or something like that. So we'll see. But I've seen ranges of 4.35 to, well, we had on that TAC we had 6%. So I mean, it varies. So we're gonna look for someone that really wants that kind of knows Henderson and wants to work with us and understands the deal here, and then what we've got going on underneath this too with all our planning, too. So we'll tell the story, and that's what I think we need to do on this one. So yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2025-05.
You want to do both of them, right?
Sure, and 2025-06.
Okay, I'll second. Motion made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion made and carried. Excellent.
You did both of them in one shot? But they're going to be separate resolutions, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. However you want to do it.
Fast and loose.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Travel safe, Todd.
Yeah, you betcha. Thanks for having me.
Police, oh, is
Chris
SCH
Chris
here?
is not here.
Rich is aware of it.
Or we need to pass this?
We are going to hold back on the resolution this
Oh,
month.
we are? We can get away with it?
Yep.
that?
Okay, all right.
So this is just information only on what he's been working on. He's at 100% plans at this point. This will go off to the county here fairly soon. Next month, we'll get resolutions going to bring this all to bid and then actually start the real process of the financing.
All right. Well, we don't have anything to do.
No, it's just plans.
Eric?
It's February 2025 police report. We had 159 directed patrols, 85 resident watches, 13 traffic details, 23 traffic stops and warnings, 3 traffic hazards, 2 city ordinances, 3 emergency management.
What is emergency management, Eric?
Just when we're watching stuff that needs to be watched over, I guess you could say.
Like something that are
I think
emergency
down
management?
here is, let's see, where did he put that?
I mean, something that falls under emergency manager?
No, it's just for stuff for, like, if you're, I don't know why he puts that, he put that in there. It should be like an assist. I would think it'd be more of a public assist.
Okay.
So, Dan's been doing this for a couple months to start to learn how to do it, so I'll talk to him about that. I can go through the ICRs
No,
and
that's
find out
fine.
for sure.
That's fine, thank you.
It's just other agencies. There's 2 law enforcement, 2 fire, medical, and 2 county. Welfare checks, there was 4, and 2 welfare checks, 1 mental health crisis, and 1 juvenile concern, 2 animal complaints, 1 suspicious property and property damage report, 1 harassment, and 1 OFP violation. Another juvenile concern, 3 community policing events, 6 civil matter or public assist. There was a harassment incident and an order for protection incident. Total, well, that's 28 days we had total coverage of police for the month. Lions Club bingo nights, so they stopped in there every night when it was bingo just for a little extra patrol. Traffic enforcement zones is the usual resident watch. He's been checking on 5 houses in town. 1 sold, but then another one was added, another one is vacant again now, so he checks them nightly. Normal ATV and the new we're starting to get registrations on the new dog ordinance. You got the picture of the new uniform patch. The ordered state seal has been updated to patch. We also posted a new part-time position on post board and it's on the city website.
Any applicants?
It's pretty tough. There's a lot of cities that are just not getting any bites on anything. It's pretty sad. So.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. City administrator.
I'll just go through a few things. FEMA update, they've obligated the first project, so there should be funds coming fairly soon. I think they're behind a few other things, so it might be a bit, but it should be coming. The second project, the renewable, should be obligated soon, follow the same path. Third project, the damaged pumps and panels, that's going to be refused for coverage to FEMA. We're going to have to look into maybe next steps on that. I'm talking with the Corps right now. they have anything in mind on what we could actually do with that, but I would probably expect that the city's going to be covering 100% of those pumps and control panels costs. I think they're, probably looking at least $350,000 right now for all of that. That only includes one pump, not the second.
That's for one pump?
That's for one pump and 2 control panels.
Just so I heard that right, 350,000.
Yes.
Okay.
2 control panels at the north.
And do we have to do both of them?
Yes. The second pump at the south side won't need replacement for a bit. The one on the north side is it's there, it's ready. And both control panels are in rough shape. But I'll continue to talk with the Corps and see if they have any ideas on how we can get that some help. He'll send out, FEMA will send out an actual formal determination memo here fairly soon. That'll basically confirm all of that in writing, and then we can start to move on from there. Let's see.
I suppose there's no state funding to ask for that either.
Not really. Most of these funds that are obligated, there's a state portion of that that comes with them, along with the federal portion. Don't really know what that breakdown is yet, but it'll be coming.
Okay.
I think we're expecting somewhere around 30,000 for project 1, and somewhere around that, maybe a little bit more for project 2 to come back.
No. So technically, we can't give FEMA money because they're saying it's the Army Corps of Engineers problem. But the Army Corps of Engineers is saying it's our problem.
Well, they're not saying anything yet.
Oh.
What they are saying is this type of project would be very unusual for them to even consider covering. Typically, it's things like landslides and levee-related things, not necessarily equipment-related. He's looking at it. I think it's time.
And we pay for these up front.
When the levee
Was built,
Yeah, but the
Yes.
And
city
that
pays
was-
for it, not the grants to build the levy or the money.
I think it was included in the levy.
Yeah.
It would have been, it would have included in the whole levy part of it, but the equipment is the city's.
And this was done back in like 1969,
No.
70?
No, they'd be,
Or is it newer?
they would, I believe they date from the reconstruction and the recertification of the levee in 92.
Yeah, they're original to 92, all that
Okay.
equipment.
Yeah.
So it's ready. But yeah, I'll continue to update on that as we go along. I think Keith is going to talk a little bit about the river stuff a little bit later. Audit and everything is now complete. Still looking, working on that FMP. We keep moving the goalposts a little bit when we had debt on, so they're continuing to look at that. We should be starting to get into that here fairly soon. And that will start to answer a lot of the questions around levy and debt concerns and rates and everything else as we get going here. Let's see, I'll be sending out letters for shade tree bonding grant fairly soon, probably tomorrow or early next week. That letter will essentially state, to pick a tree if you'd like. A couple other stipulations in there, and will get back to me, and then I'll touch base fairly soon with the nursery. We should be sending those trees out here fairly soon, and then Matt will be involved quite a bit in that too. And if really anybody knows anything about trees, I would appreciate the help.
How many trees did we get?
It'll be 125.
But like, what kinds?
A lot of them.
Most of them.
Yes, there's many.
Nice.
I think there's close to 20 different varieties.
They can pick the type of tree that.
So did Park,
Each, so while supplies last.
Got it, yeah.
So do we need to have a park board meeting?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think we've pretty much confirmed all that. at this
Okay.
point, and, the letter will go out. The only thing I can see if there maybe is if there's a lot of people requesting a lot of different trees and we can't really get there, or if there's a lot of people requesting like not to have a tree at all, and there's concerns about the urban canopy and all of that, but I don't really anticipate it. But we'll see as it comes in. We have an outdoor recreation grant resolution coming up here a little bit later in the meeting. Water treatment plant, I think Keith, you want to talk about that a little bit too, a little later. Some utility stuff. Just looking back from last meeting, I have just kind of an example worksheet, a couple pages back, called Emergency 2025, just to show you how I'm operating. I'm sending out shut-off letters right now. Haven't started yet this year, but these would start to become due right now. Letters would go out to those that are 3 periods overdue, plus those that will be 3 periods overdue on the 20th of the month. So typically, that would be 15 to 20 letters that would go out, maybe 1 or 2 end up not paying, and then those would go to shut off. With the increases in rates, we might be running into circumstances where we're collecting quite a bit more than 15 or 20 each month, so I don't know if we want to move that or not, or just continue on the path as we're going. The other stipulation was to shut off for over 300 owed. We might run into situations where a lot of people over 300.
Yeah, I mean, 300 gold is.
Nothing now.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could just be to my discretion, or we can,
I like your discretion.
okay.
Well, and you always send it out to Lisa and I, so.
Yeah, I think that's, this seems like it's going to be fine, but this is only the first 3 months, and this is a little bit off of what it normally would be. This will grow maybe to 25 or 30 at some point, so I guess, at that point we'll have to maybe think about it a little bit more. Let's see.
And just on that same line, Tim, did it kind of, we had some issues after the first of the year with some people's usage being way up, some people's usage being way down. Did that kind of square,
It did.
level off? Okay.
Yeah, that all leveled off, especially with February only having 28 days. Many of the actual bills will be,
Okay.
quite a bit lower.
Thanks.
It's all evened out. It does over the course of those 12 periods throughout the year. It evens out. And then whoever, when they call in, I try to explain that cycle and how it works. And typically we work out well. Let's see. Finance related with utilities, we are seeing obviously a revenue increase coming in. It was about 14,000 more last month compared to the average of last year. We expect that to continue. As Lane was talking about earlier, there is a negative $560,000 balance in our enterprise funds right now. We expect that to increase throughout the year. However, there will be bond payments due again in February, and that's where that TAC will come into play for cash flow purposes again.
What was the increase, $14,000 in billings or?
$14,000 in receivables
That we received?
that we received.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would expect that to be fairly average for the rest of the year. So right now, we were averaging about 55,000 coming in per month, and now it's a little over 70. Let's see. A little bit further down, just some office management stuff. City offices are closed April 2nd to the 8th. I'm going to have these numbers here and contact information for anyone who needs to get a hold of city staff. We'll put a sign out on the door. We'll put a notice on the city webpage and probably Facebook as well, just so people know that we're not answering phones, but there's just not going to be anybody in the office at that time to answer those. But I'll monitor those as I'm gone. Let's see. We'll let you guys go into that. I think that's pretty much it. That FEMA letter that came in from Seth Crawford explains why they're turning down that third project, kind of next steps that I'm starting to take right now with the Corps. That is it. We can come back to those a little bit later. We can move on to resolution.
Resolution 2025-7, approving the application for the outdoor recreation grant.
Also move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried. Okay, are you done? Mayor, we were at the Capitol last week, 2 weeks ago. And Bobby Harder has made a request for $3 million for a filtration system for the water in this year's bonding bill. So testified in front of the board, that whatever that committee is, for the need. And, there's no guarantee that the committee, the next step would be the committee to recommend it into the bonding bill, accept it in, and then of course the bonding bill has to stay in that form until it's voted on at the last possible second of the session, probably delayed. So we won't know anything about it until end of May.
Yeah.
There was a total of 18 cities asking for money.
For just that.
Just the water,
Water.
yeah.
Really?
So that was our competition.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. $3 million only gets half of
what
the
we need.
filtration systems.
Yeah.
And I guess should notice that I did receive email from Senator Smith's office. Because they have a continuing resolution at federal level at this point, there won't be any congressional grants for any fall. So this project wouldn't be considered this year. Another application would go back in 2026.
Yeah. So that's where that's at. Tim and I were in a Zoom meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers concerning the study that we requested for the river basin. And that's moving forward. They'll apply for a, Silver Jackets grant to fund it. It will take place, if everything goes as planned, sometime in 2025. We will have no new insight before our spring flood. So it's up in the air, but I'm optimistic about it. It was basically to describe the parameters of what the study would pertain to, and a lot of it was, changes in the watershed, some attention to siltation. I urged them to consider increased volume of runoff through the Rush River and Highland Creeks, which they said was not part of their scope because there's no monitoring of volume on Rush River. There is on Highland Creek, but not on Rush River.
So can we request something from the county?
Yeah, you can request all day long.
But you won't get it.
You won't get it. But they are looking at it, and we'll talk to Rachel Pickleman again for direction on that. They do add metering on different tributaries, but they have to find the funding for it.
Okay.
And that's an important one. I'm sure Sibley County would resist knowing what they're doing with that watershed.
Sure.
But it still was a positive meeting, and that's moving forward.
Well, it does sound like, according to our commissioner, that Sibley County is looking at somehow controlling some of the ditches that come this direction. Have you gotten that
No, I
information?
haven't gotten anything.
Ask Commissioner about that.
I will.
He brought that up at the township meetings the other night, that they're looking at somehow controlling that flow.
Well, there's some monies available for water storage, but it's minimal at this point. But that's literally what they'd have to do, is to somehow create some old wetlands in certain areas that would hold back. But in a year like last year, they lose so much anyway.
Right.
Because those old wetlands simply refill themselves, and that's where your crop losses are. So, yeah, I'll talk to them. Any counsel?
Can I go back to the bonding request?
Sure.
And I'm going to put the cart before the horse. But let's just say this thing makes it through committee and sticks on the bonding bill, and all of a sudden we're awarded $3 million in May. What happens then? That's only half of it.
right? Then we look for some more money on the federal.
So that is allocated
Right. Well, so at some point, we'd have.
and earmarked.
Yeah, at some point.
I don't
we'd
think you have to spend it right away.
So we have a period of time to gather forces and figure out what the heck the next step is.
Yeah.
We don't need to really worry about anything.
No, it's not like,
because
oh my
it's-
God, now we gotta do it. No.
Yeah, I think that would all go through PFA eventually, and that's a big, long process, so there's definitely time.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No council? All right, financials. Bills.
I thought everything was pretty standard.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion made and carried. Old business. New business.
That's considerations to make about a truck. The dump truck.
Probably not sure.
Very brief. We're in information gathering phase. But we met it and discussed
Okay.
some options, but they're also vague, that I don't think there's really anything to report other than we met, we talked.
Well, if the Lord keeps pushing the blizzard south.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah, on the plowing, Bruce had called me and wanted me to plow the city from now until we get.
I think you should be prepared to, yes.
Does that work?
Not tonight though, Chase.
I don't have to the rest of the year.
We do
Also
too.
too.
I think I speak for all of us. If you have any concerns or anything like that, please talk with Tim. But we've all been alerted to that discussion, that it had been had, and that you were ready to step up. So we thank you for that. But any concerns you have, please, you have to share them. Okay? Thank you.
Revised meeting schedule?
Tim, do you want to add May 19th Fire Commission?
Yeah, that's at 30.
And then I'll make a motion to approve that.
All right, motion made. I'll second it. For revised meeting schedule, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. We are almost ready to adjourn. I don't know if, when I asked earlier if there was anyone that wanted to bring anything up to the council.
I just was curious on the issue with the intermediate release on the lift station. I saw there was a bullet in the agenda, but it didn't seem like you discussed anything. So,
No, we didn't.
is the city of Henderson, if we have an issue, we clearly had multiple issues, but if there's a current issue, do they still maintain that lift station?
It is our lift station, yes. The city maintains it. There's really nothing to discuss at this point.
My question was just if it, who is the current, if there's an issue, who should I contact? Because there's been some confusion back and forth, and I just want to confirm that
At this point, the city's responsible
the city
for
of
it.
Henderson.
Yes.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
You bet. All right. The meeting's adjourned.